The term box means during an inquiry there'll be filing cabinets and there'll be big cardboard boxes which are filing boxes. If something's marked up as irrelevant or not to be followed up, they're defined as boxed. And it's basically a term used within the police force for knowing full well that nothing else was going to be done about that particular inquiry. Nearly 300 rapes and sexual assaults reported by sex workers during the Emma Caldwell murder investigations were not dealt with by police at the time, a senior officer has confirmed. Police Scotland's Deputy Chief Constable said an operation has been launched to examine sex offences which were reported around 2005. She said a number of the offences were now being dealt with by the courts. A former detective has said he had received multiple reports of rape when he worked on the murder inquiry, but he said they were boxed, marked as irrelevant and not followed up. Willie Johnston, who was in charge of the murder inquiry at the time, had no comment. The then Strathclyde Police launched one of its most expensive murder investigations after Emma Caldwell's body was found in remote woodland in South Lanarkshire in 2005. The 27-year-old had been working as a sex worker in Glasgow to fund her heroin addiction. About 800 women were working in the city's red light district at the time, and many were interviewed by detectives on the inquiry. The podcast Who Killed Emma revealed a total of 276 rapes and sexual assaults reported by sex workers during the investigation were not followed up by police. Former Detective Sergeant William Mason worked on the inquiry in 2005. Mr. Mason was based on a bus run by a church group which parked each week in the red light district. He was tasked with gaining the trust of the women who were working on the streets. Mr. Mason said the women began reporting attacks to him, sometimes up to 5 reports on one night. He said, "I would take what is classed as a message from them, and then I would write it up the following day, and put it into the inquiries, saying their name, their age, date of birth, address, where they could be contacted, and saying that a man in a blue car, had attacked her. Just the basic details that were telling me. Sometimes they were able to name them, sometimes they weren't. It could be anything from a slap in the face to, a rape. It wasn't just me that was collecting them. The guys out doing the general legwork, they were putting these reports in as well." The former detective said questions were raised at briefings with those leading the Emma Caldwell murder inquiry about what was happening with the reports. He said, "But we were told at one point in a daily briefing, a number of daily briefings when these questions were raised, that this wasn't a matter for this inquiry team. These would be followed up at a later date, but by another team." But Mr. Mason said instead of being followed up, they were boxed. "That's a police term," he said. "During an inquiry, they'll be filing cabinets and there'll be big cardboard boxes, which are filing boxes. And if something's marked up as irrelevant or not to be followed up, they're boxed." And it's basically a term that we use in the police for knowing full well nothing else was going to get done about that particular inquiry. In February, Ian Packer was convicted of Emma Caldwell's murder and of multiple rapes and sex assaults. This has seen police statements taken during the murder investigation where multiple women made rape and assault allegations against Packer. They were not acted on at the time, and it took nearly 20 years for Packer to be put on trial for his crimes. Allegations were also made against other individuals during the inquiry and not acted upon. Nikki, working alongside Emma Caldwell in Glasgow in 2005, said she tried to report attacks by Ian Packer, but was instead held for soliciting. Nikki recalled, "There was twice that I went to Stewart Street to report things, and taken up there by uniformed officers in a car, and I'd end up in a cell for a Section 46 for prostitution, because I was on the streets working and they'll do nothing else with the rest of the information." In February, as well as being convicted of murder, Ian Packer was also found guilty of abducting and attempting to rape Nikki. She said of the police, "They didn't believe us. There's times where I was told it's your own fault, you're putting yourself out there, what you're doing, you know what to expect." After Packer was convicted, Police Scotland Deputy Chief Constable Beck Smith apologised and said Emma Caldwell, her family and many other victims have been let down by policing in 2005. They said, "We did a huge amount of work around understanding the offences that were reported around 2005, and there were many. We launched a separate operation so that we could understand the offending at that time, and we submitted several reports to the Crown Office in terms of that offending. Time is no barrier to justice, and if women feel like they want to come forward and report now, then absolutely it's the time to do that." Scientists sampling DNA in the air to monitor the spread of deadly diseases said their work could help make food prices cheaper. The Earlham Institute in Norwich said its air sample processes detect bacteria, viruses and other microorganisms which pose a threat to plants, animals and humans, more quickly and accurately than other techniques. This could help farmers grow crops more cheaply and efficiently, as they would not need to use any chemicals. It could also transform environmental conservation work as well as public health measures. All living things are constantly shedding bits of DNA into their surroundings. Maya Berelson, who is a PhD student at the Institute, says this technique gives us an idea of what is living, where and when very quickly. Each device works like a really big hoover. They suck up over 200 litres of air per minute. The air goes through the filter, and anything in the air, like bits of bacteria, skin cells, bits of pollen, that all gets stuck on the filter. That DNA will then be sequenced and a profile will be created of all the different organisms detected in the area. The Earlham Institute has been sampling the air near farmers' fields for several years, but is now also sampling coastal, forest and city locations too. 8 samplers have been placed across Norfolk, including Brancaster, Norwich city centre, Thetford Forest and at Carlton and Alton marshes in Suffolk. There are many more now in Cambridgeshire, Lancashire and Oxfordshire. The team switches on the devices at the same time for 1 hour and will repeat this experiment every 3 months to get an idea of seasonal changes. The full results will be analysed in the spring of 2025. Postdoctoral scientist Darren Heavens said, "Food will be cheaper. If we inform the farmer that there's a pathogen in the air, he can take a more targeted approach when it comes to spraying chemicals. If he only has to spray one, he'll save money. If the pathogen's not there at all, he won't have to spray at all, again saving money. If he can save money, that can be passed on and the consumer will get a cheaper product. But the research has only just begun, so it will be a while before any difference may be noticed at the checkouts." Labour has promised to overhaul the business rates system to help revitalise the high street if elected in the UK general election. The party has not specified what will replace the current business rates system, but said reforms would level the playing field for high street firms against online rivals. The party first put forward a plan outlining how it wants to support Britain's small businesses back in November. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said that hard-working small businesses have been held back. Business rates are a tax on non-residential property such as pubs, restaurants, warehouses, factories, shops and offices. The amount businesses pay is based on how much annual rent could be charged on the premise, which is known as the rateable value. Central government has a significant degree of control over business rates in England, but they are collected by local councils. On Saturday, Shadow Chancellor Rachel Reeves said that they want to reform the business rate system in a way that reduces the costs for small businesses and high streets, ensuring that some of the big multinationals and tech companies pay their fair share. The party would also create banking hubs to ensure small businesses and customers have ready access to cash when on the high street. As part of the package of measures, Labour says it would stamp out the late payment of invoices via new legislation to force large businesses to reveal their payment practices, as well as revitalising high streets by cracking down on antisocial behaviours. Labour also plans new laws to allow smaller firms to qualify for public contracts. It is seeking to claim the mantle as the party of business that's traditionally associated with Conservatives. Ms Reeves was joined on the campaign trail by retail guru Mary Portas, who has switched to Labour after advising David Cameron's coalition government on how to revive high streets in 2010. Ms Portas said that high streets were vital to communities and their well-being. She described small businesses as the backbone of our economy, which were left behind terribly during the COVID-19 pandemic, when shopping habits moved online. Ms Portas also praised plans to crack down on late payments, as cash flow is vital to independent businesses. Previous research by the Federation of Small Businesses has suggested that more than a half of small businesses it surveyed in 2022 had experienced late payments in the 3 previous months. Tina McKenzie, policy chair at the FSB, said it was good to see a late payment addressed by Labour and that eyes would now turn towards its manifesto launch to see if the party takes a pro-small business approach. Speaking ahead of a business-themed event held by Labour on Saturday, Sir Keir said that entrepreneurs had faced economic instability due to Conservative chaos. However, Business Minister Kevin Hollenrake said that Rishi Sunak and the Conservatives have a record of taking bold action to support small businesses. He pointed to previous measures taken by the government, such as freezing business rates for hospitality venues during the pandemic when trade was hit by lockdowns. Drew Hendry, the economy spokesperson for the SNP, suggested that Labour's plans were empty promises for Scottish small business owners. He added that the SNP had already established the Scottish National Investment Bank, but called for the removal of red tape, higher costs, and worker visa blocks created by Brexit. Meanwhile, a spokesperson for the Liberal Democrats said that the Conservative Party had completely let down business owners time and time again, and that it would also look at overhauling the business rate system. Drug company Moderna says its combined flu and COVID vaccine, which targets the two diseases in a single shot, has passed a vital part of final stage scientific checks. The phase 3 trial shows the vaccine arms the body with protective antibodies, and it does so as effectively as separate flu and COVID shots, results suggest. Fewer injections would be more convenient and simpler, Moderna says. Chief Executive Stefan Bancel said he hoped the messenger ribonucleic acid mRNA vaccine could be made widely available in 2026 or maybe 2025. We are very delighted about the results because it's the first time in the world that a company is able to show positive phase 3 results combining in a single dose flu and COVID vaccine. You get one dose, one needle, which meant ease and peace of mind for the consumer. Competitors Pfizer and BioNTech are testing a similar 2-in-1 mRNA vaccine against flu and COVID. Scientists hope mRNA vaccines will be faster to make an update than the current ones used against flu, and be a better match for ever-changing strains. In the continuing Moderna trial, the mRNA 1083 jab produced a higher immune response than the licensed comparator vaccines. It matched or bettered currently approved flu jabs, including high-dose ones designed for older people, and it was better than Moderna's existing COVID booster, Spikevax, at making the body produce disease-fighting antibodies, probably because it had been designed to fight more recent variants circulating around the world. The results are from 8,000 volunteers, all over 50 and a half over 64. The Moderna said it had focused on older people because they were most likely to continue to be offered COVID vaccines, but it plans ultimately to offer the new jab to younger people also. Any side effects were generally mild, a bit of soreness where the needle went into the skin, and some tiredness, as with regular vaccines. The company plans to present the findings at a medical conference as well as submit them for publication. It is also developing an mRNA vaccine against a disease called cytomegalovirus, which it hopes to have late-stage trial results this autumn. Currently, there is nothing to protect pregnant women and their unborn babies against CMV. President Emmanuel Macron has called snap parliamentary elections later this month in the wake of a big victory for his rival Marine Le Pen's national rally in the European Parliament vote. The far-right party is on course to win 32% of the vote, exit polls say, more than twice that of the president's Renaissance Party. Announcing the dissolution of Parliament, he said the two rounds of voting would take place on the 30th of June and the 7th of July, a few weeks before the Paris Olympics. Mr. Macron made the dramatic and surprise decision in a televised address from the Élysée Palace an hour after voting closed and exit polls had been declared in France's EU elections. His decision came not long after National Rally's 28-year-old leader, Jordan Bardella, had openly called on the president to call parliamentary elections. "I've heard your message," the president told French voters, "and I will not let it go without a response. France needs a clear majority in serenity and harmony," he said, adding that he could not resign himself to the far-right's progress everywhere in the continent. Now barely 2 years into his second term as president, Mr. Macron already lacks a majority in the French parliament, and though this European vote in theory has no bearing on national politics, he clearly decided that continuing his mandate without a new popular consultation would place too much of a strain on the system. The upcoming parliamentary elections also won't affect Mr. Macron's own job, as they are separate from the presidential elections, and his term as president still runs for 3 more years. Ms. Le Pen, who has twice been defeated by Mr. Macron in presidential elections, immediately reacted, saying her party was ready to exercise power, ready to put an end to mass immigration. Calling a snap election is a huge surprise for the country and a huge risk for President Macron. He could have reacted differently. He could have just kept going, explaining the far-right's massive victory as a European aberration, which would be corrected at more important elections. He could have trusted to the impending European Football Championship in Germany, and above all the Paris Olympics, to keep people's minds off politics for a couple of months. That was certainly how the Paris commentariat thought he would take his party's route. But one can only assume the president had seen this coming and planned his response in advance. Certainly the result was an almost exact replica of the polls, so he would have had plenty of time to consider his options. The fact is that he is stuck. Without a majority, getting any bill through the National Assembly is already a struggle. With most of the country now so clearly against him, any new legislation, for example the upcoming budget, could have proved explosive. So he has plumped for clarity. If National Rally has the votes, then, he says, they should be given the chance to govern. Obviously, the president will hope his own Renaissance Party can mount a fight back at the elections on the 30th of June and the 7th of July, or that other parties will do better too. But he must appreciate that the odds favour another victory for National Rally. Maybe not one so sweeping as Sunday's result, but enough for it to become the biggest party in Parliament, at which point we might well have a Prime Minister Marine Le Pen, or indeed Jordan Bardella. A special type of fluorescent dye might help surgeons better locate and remove prostate cancer cells, UK scientists from University of Oxford believe. Getting rid of all of the cancer is vital to cut the risk of it coming back. The glowing dye attaches to a protein found only on the cancer cells. In a small early trial on 23 men, surgeons say it helped them find areas of cancerous tissues not picked up by the naked eye or other clinical methods. A larger trial is now planned. Funded by Cancer Research UK, CRUK, in some of the 23 men having prostate cancer operations, surgeons spotted cancer cells that have spread to nearby tissue and lymph nodes, which they say they may have missed with conventional methods. This is the first time this method has been tested on humans in the UK, with the findings now published in the European Journal of Nuclear Medicine and Molecular Imaging. A larger trial called the PROMOTE study will further test how effective this is compared with other approaches. Lead researcher Professor Freddie Hamady said it was too early to know if it would work on every patient, but that it was promising. In many patients we saw cancer that we would not have seen otherwise. It's the first time we managed to see such fine details of prostate cancer in real time during surgery. With this technique we can strip all the cancer away, including the cells that have spread from the tumour, which could give it the chance to come back later. Equally important is cancer we don't see. Professor Hamdy believes the method will mean more healthy tissues can be preserved in surgery, reducing the chance of side effects that can sometimes happen following prostate operations, such as erectile dysfunction and incontinence. David Butler from Bradford, West Yorkshire, took part in the trial. It did locate cancer that was in my lymph nodes and also my bladder. He had a course of radiotherapy after his surgery and has since been clear of cancer. I count myself as very lucky. Prostate cancer is the most common cancer in men in the UK, with about 52,300 new cases every year. Dr. Ian Folkes, Executive Director of Research and Innovation at CRUK, said we need better tools to spot cancers which have started to spread further. The combined marker dye and imaging system that this research has developed could fundamentally transform how we treat prostate cancer in the future. CRUK hopes that if the trials go well, the dye could be adapted to use in surgery for other types of cancer too in the future. A man and a woman who were taken to hospital after a funfair ride malfunctioned at a country show in South London are no longer believed to be in a life-threatening condition. Officers and the Health and Safety Executive continued to investigate the incident on Saturday evening at Lambeth Country Show in Brockwell Park. Police had previously said the pair, both in their 40s, had life-threatening injuries. Two other people, a man in his 50s and an 11-year-old girl who were injured in the incident, have since been discharged from hospital. The problem occurred during the first day of the free event, and funfair rides were closed on Sunday. One of the fairground rides was seen covered in tarpaulin, although it was not clear which ride had malfunctioned. The council said emergency services had arrived at the scene shortly after the incident at 6:20 BST, and the funfair had been closed. Additional safety checks were being carried out on all rides and attractions at the show, Lambeth Council said. Officers have attended the scene on Sunday alongside the Health and Safety Executive as inquiries continue to establish the full circumstances. The Nepalese army says it has removed 11 tons of rubbish, 4 corpses and 1 skeleton from Mount Everest and 2 other Himalayan peaks this year. It took troops 55 days to recover the rubbish and bodies from Everest, Nuts and Lutz mountains. It is estimated that more than 50 tons of waste and more than 200 bodies cover Everest. The army began conducting an annual cleanup of the mountain, which is often described as the world's highest garbage dump, in 2019 during concerns about overcrowding and climbers queuing in dangerous conditions to reach the summit. The 5 cleanups have collected 119 tons of rubbish, 14 human corpses and some skeletons, the army says. This year, authorities aim to reduce rubbish and improve rescues by making climbers wear tracking devices. In the future, the government plans to create a mountain rangers team to monitor rubbish and put more money towards its collection, Nepal's Department of Tourism Director of Mountaineering, Ragesh Gaurang, said. For the spring climbing season that ended in May, the government issued permits to 421 climbers, down from a record-breaking 478 last year. Those numbers do not include Nepalese guides. In total, an estimated 600 people climbed the mountain this year. This year, 8 climbers died or went missing, compared to 19 last year. Brit Daniel Patterson and his Nepalese guide Pashtenshi Sherpa are those missing, after being hit by falling ice on the 21st of May. Mr. Patterson's family started a fundraiser to hire a search team to find them, but said in an update on the 4th of June that recovery is not possible at this time because of the location and danger of the operation. Mr. Gurung said the number of permits was lower this year because of the global economic situation. China also issuing permits and the national election in India, which reduced the number of climbers from that country. The number of permits will likely drop more after Nepal's Supreme Court ordered the government in May to limit permits. The preliminary order didn't set a maximum number. Mr. Gurung says he welcomes the order and the government is thinking about reforms such as staggering climbers to reduce traffic jams at the summit. The government will work with experts to determine a safe number of climbers. Without the scientific study, it can't be said what will be the perfect number for Mount Everest. Restrictions on carrying liquids over 100 millilitres in hand luggage are being temporarily reintroduced at some regional airports in the UK. The change will apply from 12 o'clock British Standard Time on Sunday the 9th of June 2024 and will affect passengers at Newcastle, Leeds, Bradford, London City, Aberdeen, Southend and Teesside airports. All of the airports affected have Next Generation Security Checkpoints (NGSC) in full operation and had scrapped the 100 millilitre liquid rules after introducing the high-tech CT scanners. The Department for Transport said reintroducing restrictions would enable further improvements to be made to the new checkpoint systems, and was not in response to a specific threat. Bristol Airport was scheduled to scrap the 100 millilitre limit on liquids being allowed in carry-on baggage from the 14th of June. However, that will now be delayed. There remains a 100 millilitre max rule for each liquid taken in hand luggage, said a spokesperson for Bristol Airport. Most UK airports, including London Gatwick, Heathrow and Manchester, still have the restrictions on liquids in place as their new scanners are not yet in place. The 6 smaller airports affected warned passengers to pack liquids into hold luggage wherever possible to avoid delays going through security. Liquids, including aerosols and gels carried in hand luggage, should not exceed 100 millilitres. A Newcastle International Airport spokesperson said the airport was working to keep disruption to a minimum. Transport Secretary Mark Harper advised passengers to check airport websites for specific rules before travelling. For most passengers, actually, the rules haven't changed at all and won't therefore change overnight. He said that the reintroduction of restrictions was to allow changes to be made to the scanning equipment. It's a temporary measure and will set out when that can be reversed in due course. The government originally told all UK airports to upgrade to the new scanners by 2022, but the deadline was later moved to 1st of June 2024. Major airports were subsequently allowed to miss the 1st of June rollout date. For some airports, the new scanners, which are bigger and heavier than older versions, required physical changes to security areas, and in some cases even the reinforcement of floors. The 6 smaller airports had met the deadline and removed the 100 millilitre rule. Teesside Airport said it was proud to have been the first UK airport to drop the 100 millilitre limit after significant investment in the new technologies. A spokesman said it meant passengers had a smoother journey, but added, "We recognise and respect the announcement made by the Department for Transport and will fully comply with all requirements. We hope this nationwide issue is resolved as quickly as possible." Birmingham Airport had already upgraded to the new equipment, but has had to keep the 100 millilitre rule, although passengers don't have to remove liquids up to 100 millilitres from hand luggage when going through security. It puts this down to an outstanding regulatory approval on its new screening machines. Airports that missed the installation deadline have been able to apply individually for extension, which could mean passengers may have to deal with the restrictions until June 2025. The DfT previously said that the Civil Aviation Authority would impose financial penalties on airports that keep missing deadlines. Back in January, consumer group Which warned that extending the restrictions could cause confusion during the summer holidays. The rules requiring liquids to be taken through security in containers of 100 millilitres or less in a clear plastic bag were introduced in 2006 after a plot to bomb a transatlantic flight was foiled. The new scanners use CT X-ray technology to provide 3D images, so items can be kept inside bags and liquids up to 2 litres will be permitted. Airports have been hit by supply chain issues and faced major construction work to install the scanners. The X-ray machines, similar to CT scanners used in hospitals, are very heavy and in some instances floors will need to be reinforced. CCTV footage appears to show TV presenter Dr. Michael Mosley disappear from view as he makes his way down a hillside close to where his body was found. A post-mortem examination is due to take place on Monday after the body of Dr. Mosley was found 4 days after he went missing on the Greek island of Symi. It is understood the coroner could not determine from the offset whether Dr. Mosley had fallen because of the condition of the body. The coroner, who has arrived on the neighbouring island of Rhodes, where the post-mortem will take place, is believed to have ruled out the possibility of foul play. Dr. Mosley's body was found on a hillside near the Agia Marina beach bar on Sunday. Footage taken nearby, which has been seen, is said to show what appears to be Dr. Mosley's final moments as he makes his way down a slope before disappearing behind a wall. The 67-year-old father of 4 was reported missing after he had left Agios Nikolaos beach to set off on a walk at about 1:30 p.m. local time, 11:30 British Standard Time on Wednesday. Greek authorities conducted an extensive search for Dr. Mosley amid high temperatures. His body was found on Sunday as teams were searching the coastline. A bar manager found his body, PA news agency reported, after the island's mayor saw something by the fence of the bar and alerted staff. Dr. Mosley's wife, Dr. Claire Bailey Mosley, on Sunday said her family was taking comfort in the fact that he was so very nearly made it. CCTV footage showed Dr. Mosley had walked to the other side of the bay in intense heat and across rocky terrain. He did an incredible climb, took the wrong route and collapsed where he couldn't be easily seen by the extensive search team. She also paid tribute to her wonderful, funny, kind and brilliant husband after the devastating news his body had been found. We had an incredibly lucky life together. We loved each other very much and were so happy together. The former deputy leader of the Labour Party, Lord Tom Watson, was among those to pay fresh tributes to Dr. Mosley on Monday. He certainly changed my life. He gave me the idea that I wasn't broke, Mr. Watson, who said in 2018 that he had reversed his type 2 diabetes through diet and exercise. Dr. Mosley studied medicine in London and qualified as a doctor, and for the last 2 decades was working as a presenter, documentary maker, journalist and author. He was known for his TV programmes including Trust Me, I'm a Doctor and BBC Radio 4's Just One Thing podcast. He also wrote a column for the Daily Mail. Mr. Mosley had been an advocate for intermittent fasting diets, including through the 5-2 diet and the Fast 800 diet. Dr. Salia Ahsan, who co-presented Trust Me, I'm a Doctor with Dr. Mosley, told the BBC's breakfast programme that she was initially terrified to take on the role, but that he put me at ease almost immediately. That really personable, accessible character that comes across on television, that's exactly how he was in real life. He did incredible things for medicine and for public health in a way that I think few others have. Lord Watson recalled the moment he first read a book by Dr. Mosley, saying it was like a light came on in my life. I just became a real fan of his work, and over the years, he's helped me maintain that and help millions of others. And that's what great journalism is. He explained very complex ideas of science in a very simple way. Science broadcaster Dr. Chris Van Tulleken, who also worked with Dr. Mosley, said his former colleague had invented an entire genre of broadcasting over the course of his career. He added that Dr. Mosley's work quietly changed my daily practices, from brushing his teeth while standing on one leg to sometimes fasting. He was giving people tools they could use that everyone could afford. The timeline of the events. On Wednesday at 1:30 p.m. local time, Dr. Michael Mosley leaves his wife Claire on Agios Nikolaos beach and sets off for a walk. At 1:50, man carrying umbrella is seen on CCTV in Peddy. 1:57, same man is seen again at Peddy's marina heading northeast. Thursday, 11:15, police are unable to find the presenter, so they inform Athens and request assistance from the Greek Fire Department. 2 p.m, Greek fire services with 6 firefighters and a drone team arrive in Simi. 1900, 7 p.m. Helicopter deployed to assist search. Friday, divers joined the search in the water around Simi. Saturday, 6 a.m. Firefighters resume search for Dr. Mosley. Sunday, authorities looking for Dr. Mosley find a body. A leading figure in South Africa's second biggest political party has warned that a failure to fix the economy might end up with violence that nobody wants. In the aftermath of the elections, Dion George, who oversees economic policy for the Democratic Alliance, DA, has said that political parties need to set aside our deeply entrenched ideological perspectives to get the economy growing again. The African National Congress, ANC, the party that ended white minority rule in 1994, came first in last week's polls, but did not win an outright majority and is trying to put together a government of national unity. South Africa's president, the ANC's Cyril Ramaphosa, has said that the concerns of citizens must be the priority. These issues include job creation and the growth of our economy that will be inclusive, the high cost of living, service delivery, crime and corruption. Nearly 8 million people are unemployed across the country, meaning the jobs rate is 32.9%. It is one of the highest in the world and has been called a ticking time bomb in a UN report. Amid ongoing power cuts that make it difficult for businesses to function, this week the Statistics Agency said the economy shrank in the first 3 months of this year, with manufacturing, mining and construction suffering in particular. Last year, South Africa's economy grew just 0.6%. A whole lot of small businesses have actually shut down because of widespread problems with energy supplies as well as the state-run transport and water networks, said Bashiwe Mavuso, the chief executive of the influential lobby group Business Leadership South Africa. Its members include local names such as the Bidvest conglomerate and Absa Bank, as well as international firms such as Amazon, Volkswagen and Nestle. Ms. Mavuso says the trading environment is not conducive and that her members' plea is for the government to really fix the basics. The central bank says foreign investment fell by a third last year, given the difficulties of trading in a country that the International Monetary Fund forecasts with a nonetheless return to being Africa's biggest by the end of this year. French bank BNP Paribas and UK oil giant Shell are amongst the big foreign names pulling out of South Africa. In a recent aborted takeover bid for the mining firm Anglo American, Australia's BHP made it clear it did not want the company's South African assets. Despite having a presence in South Africa for more than 120 years, Shell says its exit is part of a broader review of its business. The competition for investment is fierce, and Ms. Mavuso says we've really made it difficult for capital to land here. East Africa is eating South Africa's breakfast, she jests, while remaining hopeful that the size of the domestic market and the rule of law will ensure the return of investment once the economy is back in better shape. For both foreign and domestic companies, Ms. Mavuso says the government has to create an environment that is conducive for investment, and that will bring the jobs South Africa so badly needs. With so many people out there is widespread inequality, and she warns that means you're never going to be able to attain social stability. So we're definitely at risk of the erosion of social cohesion. Amongst 15 to 34-year-olds, the unemployment rate is 45.5%, and the frustration caused by lack of jobs is easy to find amongst young people in Johannesburg. Business opportunities for young people must be the new government's priority, says unemployed 23-year-old Tebogo Makobene. I've been looking for a job for 2 years as an animator and I couldn't find anything so far. Sophie Masila, a 24-year-old financial analyst, agrees. More opportunities and work for the youth are paramount and should be more accessible. Constant power cuts concern her and 24-year-old student Felisandre Maguni, who says his greatest frustration is just service delivery, at a time that is tough for a lot of South Africans. South Africa has been described as the most unequal country in the world, and there is a critique from the left that the economy simply does not work for the majority of the population. The Economic Freedom Fighters EFF, the fourth largest party, has called for greater nationalisation and the expropriation of land so that the wealth of the country can be more evenly shared. The party says that some of the more business-friendly policies of the ANC and its broad-based black economic empowerment legislation have not tackled the underlying problems the country has, which are the legacy of the racist apartheid system that ended 30 years ago. The difficulties many are facing in making ends meet in a stagnant economy led the government to increase a range of welfare payments in February's budget. More than 24.5 million people, or 39% of the population, receive some form of financial help from the government. It's one reason why government debt has increased to 74% of the country's annual income, and that the IMF warned in April that decisive efforts are needed to cut spending. South Africa's own Treasury has warned that debt service costs are choking the economy and the public finances. They now account for 20% of all government spending, more than basic education, social protection, or health. Looking at the electricity problem, the DA's Dr. George says that it is probably important for the government to borrow money to fix the country's crippled energy network, railways and ports, but he admits that he will be difficult to afford. Another option, he says, is to change the model, inject the private sector into it, which would lessen the strain on government finances. With centre-right DA getting 22% of the vote, it may have some influence on future policy, and also wants labour laws such as minimum wage rules relaxed to boost employment. It's priced workers out of the market, employers are not willing to employ people at the rate of the minimum wage, says Dr. George. His white-led party proposes an exemption for 18 to 35-year-olds who have been unemployed for 2 years. But it is the story of policy which puts the DA at odds with South Africa's trade unions, an important ally of the ANC. The unions have warned the ANC against forming any agreement with the DA. We reject any coalition with the DA, Solly Fito, General Secretary of South Africa's Power Trades Union, Federation Kasatsu, said earlier in the week. This is one political party that called for scrapping of the minimum wage, NHI, and saying workers have too many rights. NHI refers to National Health Insurance Bill, which promises universal health care for all, and was signed into law by President Ramaphosa just before the election. Mr. Pito's comments shows the real fears from the ANC's support base that the DA will not support their social welfare program. The DA, for example, opposes both the NHI and the ANC's black empowerment policies. Dr. George counters that we need to rein back the strength of the trade unions in our economy. He says that while the ANC's Finance Minister, Ena Wana, agrees with him that South Africa has a growth problem, they disagree on whether the ANC has a spending problem. Choices need to be made to get the economy to grow again, because if we don't do that, we'd end up with a bailout. We'll end up with an economy that doesn't grow, and of course, heaven forbid, we might end up with violence that nobody wants. Gaming's annual preview marathon took place over the weekend with dozens of new titles on show. Against the backdrop of an industry wrestling with layoffs and questions over its future, expectations of setting many new blockbuster titles were low this year. Microsoft capped off the main events with a successful showcase, and fans of Call of Duty got an extended look at upcoming 1990s set Black Ops 6. It'll be the first game in the series to appear on the Xbox Game Pass service, and its developers will be hoping to banish the memory of last year's poorly received Modern Warfare 3 campaign. But that was just the icing on a very busy cake. They spent the time looking and investigating what has happened with the industry. Even though the lines of console exclusivity are becoming more and more blurry, Showcase season would be completed without a post-match debate about who won, and most agreed that Microsoft put on a strong display. It needed one. So far, Xbox's 2024 has been dominated by headlines about mass layoffs and criticism over the closure of 4 in-house studios. Microsoft's Showcase didn't dwell on any of that, but it did take the chance of reminding us all that it now owns a big chunk of the AAA games industry, thanks to its $65 billion acquisition of Activision Blizzard. Free to flex its merger muscles this year after finally sealing the deal, it kicked off with a montage from upcoming Call of Duty Black Ops 6, which got its own dedicated preview straight after the main event. From there, it launched into an action-packed trailer for Doom: The Dark Ages, and the rest of the 1-hour session crammed in a host of flagship franchises, including Warcraft, Diablo, Elder Scrolls Online, and the recently revitalized Fallout 76. At times it felt like a greatest hits reel, and Microsoft seemed to drive that point home when it closed the main preview with footage of a new Gears of War game. The soundtrack of Gary Jules' Mad World was the same song used in the influential trailer for the original 2006 game in the series, a full circle moment. Fans also got glimpses of Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, Fable the Perfect Dark reboot, and Ukraine-developed Stalker 2. Critics would say the showcase couldn't have been more varied. When you boil it down, it was heavy and open-world action, RPGs, and first-person shooters. But fans would point out those are the genres Xbox built, and there was also praise for the diversity on show. Many of the titles seen featured female protagonists, or people belonging to ethnic minorities as their main characters. Microsoft's gaming division has been accused of lacking direction recently, and questions will remain about where it wants to take the Xbox brand in future and whether all of its studios will survive. But for one night, at least, it successfully steered the conversation back to its games. Host Jeff Keighley warned fans ahead of this year's event that the headline Summer Game Fest showcase would be a light affair with no big surprises, and he was pretty much true to his word, with the exception of a guest appearance from Remedy Entertainment's Sam Lake announcing that new content for 2023 Game of the Year contender Alan Wake 2 would be released the next day. The event didn't contain many drop-your-coffee moments. With the exception of Civilization 7, an update in the long-running strategy series, and a new Sonic game, there weren't too many appearances from well-known franchises. But we did find out that popular online shooter Valorant is coming to consoles, got a brief glimpse of the upcoming Harry Potter Quidditch Championships, and a star-studded trailer for Killer Bean. We also saw the first set of games from horror movie studio Blumhouse, including a new title from BAFTA-winning game director Sam Barlow. Sony and LEGO also revealed that their collaboration, based on PlayStation's Horizon series, will also be coming to PC and Nintendo Switch, but not Xbox. So far this year, most of the gaming's real breakout success stories, such as Palworld, Helldivers 2, and Animal Well, have come from smaller studios. And for those people who did not feel their otherwise well-received Xbox showcase was a bit samey, there was a range of indie trailer fests to keep fans busy. As well as 2 dedicated showcases after the main event, there were also sessions dedicated to women-led games, titles from Latin American developers, and wholesome direct, and celebrating uplifting, compassionate, cozy games. Among US developer Inner Sloth unveiled its new funding project Outer Sloth, aimed at helping other indie developers to get their games out. With headlines focusing on troubles at the AAA end of the games industry, the struggles for indies to funding can get overlooked, and Inner Sloth, a pandemic success story, got praise for paying back some of its own breakout success. Thirsty Suitors studio Outer Loop Games No Relation is one of the first developers to get funding from Outer Sloth. Co-founder Chandra Akanayi said the project is great for indie studios that are self-sufficient and looking to be able to succeed in the games business by giving them an alternative to traditional publishing deals. Rumours and wishful thinking are the fuel of the pre-showcase hype machine, and this year's speculation was rife. There were some pretty spot-on predictions, but not all of them came true. Most notably, a rumoured Microsoft handheld didn't make an appearance, but in a follow-up interview with gaming website IGN, Xbox boss Phil Spencer suggested there would be more hardware announcements. Claims that we'd see new releases in the Resident Evil franchise didn't come to pass, and there was no sign of Borderlands 4, even if we did see a short clip from the upcoming movie adaptation. And if you braved the live comment section during the SGF and Xbox showcases, you might have wondered why people kept shouting Skong. It's a reference to Hollow Knight Silksong, the sequel to 2017's mega-popular Metroidvania adventure developed by the tiny team at Australian developer Team Cherry. The Conservatives are promising to bring in a law, if re-elected, which they say would curb unnecessary restrictions on drivers. The plans would include unilaterally reversing the expansion of the ULEZ Clean Air scheme in London and giving communities referendums on low-traffic neighbourhoods. Ministers have been trying to position themselves as being on the side of drivers for some time, but Labour criticised the announcement as desperate stuff from a government that has run out of road. If it retains power, the Conservative Party says it would introduce a bill to Parliament which it says would prevent any potential pay-per-mile taxes being introduced. Under such schemes, drivers could be charged for how far they drive, what car they drive, and what time of day. They have been floated as one potential replacement for vehicle excise duty, VED, commonly known as car tax, to plug the revenue gap as drivers switch to electric cars. VED and fuel duty that motorists pay at the pump raise billions of pounds a year for the government, but neither tax is currently levied on pure electric vehicles. There are mixed opinions on pay-per-mile schemes among industry figures and drivers, although the Transport Select Committee has previously said road pricing technologies could help address congestion too. Under the Conservatives' pledge set out on Friday, it also said it would reverse the expansion of London's ultra-low emission zone, known as ULEZ. The Central London ULEZ, first introduced in 2019, was extended to cover the whole of Greater London last August. A £12.50 daily charge applies for entering the zone, in a vehicle that does not meet emission standards. It is aimed at tackling air pollution in the capital city, but its expansion sparked protests across London, with ULEZ cameras and signage also being damaged. Prime Minister Rishi Sunak took aim at Labour leaders in Westminster and Cardiff Bay, who he accused of launching a war on drivers. The Conservatives say that the bill would ensure a local referendum on any new proposed low-traffic neighbourhood schemes or 20-mile-per-hour zones, as well as existing schemes, where 15% of residents in affected wards signed a petition. In March, new government guidance was issued on LTNs after a review was ordered by Rishi Sunak. It said councils would have to consider residents' views before introducing any LTNs, which are designed to reduce traffic in residential areas by restricting their use as through routes. The Welsh Government reduced the restricted roads default speed from 30 miles per hour to 20 miles per hour in December last year, in built-up areas like villages, towns and cities, but the process of reverting some roads from the 20 mile per hour limit will begin in September as the policy is being refined, after it drew heavy criticism from some affected drivers. A Labour spokesperson said that it would leave decisions on safe school streets and local traffic measures to local communities, not politicians in Westminster. They added that they would tackle rip-off car insurance costs and break down planning barriers to ensure transport infrastructure is delivered on time. A Liberal Democrat spokesperson suggested the announcement was pure hypocrisy. The Conservatives' lack of action and cuts to highway budget costs motorists across the country time and money every day. It also said that they would increase rural fuel duty relief to help drivers in those areas. Labour has said there is a better deal to go with Tata on the future of its UK operations. On a visit to Port Talbot, where thousands of jobs are at risk, Shadow Business Secretary Jonathan Reynolds called on the steel giant to wait until after next month's general election and hold new talks. Tata is proposing major restructuring plans at Port Talbot, including investing £1.25 billion in greener technology, but thousands of jobs will disappear during the transition period. The company also said it would not be changing course in Port Talbot, regardless of who wins the general election. Mr Reynolds pledged more government money than the £500 million promised by the Conservatives. The environment for steelmaking will get better. I'm asking the company to engage with us in good faith to take advantage of that better operating environment. And I believe there is an outcome that might not be what all of us ideally want, but will work better for everybody. Most of all for the people here in Port Talbot. One employee said the looming job losses were really hitting home. Jamie Jones, age 45, who has worked at the site since he was 17, said worries about redundancies could be felt by those working with people's mental health under strain. Mr Jones, a third-generation steelworker in Port Talbot, said there had been long whispers about closures, but that the finality of it now is really hitting home. It's difficult, you can feel it in the mood there. People's mental health is under strain. People have got mortgages, families, the fact that place might not be supporting their families next year is just difficult to fathom at the minute. Mr Jones also has said that the closure would have a knock-on effect on other industries in the town. For every one Tata job, there's probably 4 or 5 other jobs, the cafes in town, the newsagents that rely on steelworkers to keep them going. So it's going to be massive if that place goes. He added he hoped whichever party wins the general election would introduce a new industrial strategy that helps save jobs in Port Talbot. Hopefully the unions and Tata can get together and save jobs for future generations. But in a message to staff, Tata Chief Executive Rajesh Nair warned neither the general election nor its outcome has any impact on the decision to close both blast furnaces by the end of September. It is a move the company argues is essentially in cutting its financial losses and paving the way for greener steelmaking in South Wales. In October, the UK government announced it would give Tata a £500 million grant towards the £1.25 billion cost for new electric arc furnace. The new furnace will melt scrap steel and end the current carbon-intensive method of producing liquid iron from rock. Tata Steel has consistently argued its Port Talbot works was losing £1 million a day, and that any move towards greener steelmaking would also need to address the financial losses. Unions have called for a longer transition period, keeping at least one blast furnace operational until the electric furnace is up and running. But Tata has confirmed it will press ahead with closure of the heavy end in Port Talbot by the end of September, with construction work on the electric furnace scheduled to begin in August 2025. A transition board has been established to coordinate support and training opportunities for affected workers. The UK government pledged £80 million towards the fund, while Tata Steel has committed £20 million. What do the political parties say? The Welsh Conservatives said they were committed to ensuring steelmaking took place at Port Talbot and was secure for the future by supporting the transition to electric furnaces. They said the UK government was investing £500 million into the new furnaces, as well as creating a transition fund worth £100 million to support workers' retrain. This is a huge contrast to the Labour government in Wales, who haven't spent a single penny helping the transition. They added millions were being invested into the wider Short West Wales economy, with the Celtic Freeport, which was estimated to create thousands of high-skilled, well-paid jobs. Labour's Shadow Business Secretary, Jonathan Reynolds, said the party would pledge more than £500 million offered by the Conservatives to help steel making in South Wales. Our request is that there is no irreversible decisions made before the 4th of July, and that the company negotiates with us, with our Welsh Government colleagues, with the trade unions, because there is a better deal that can be done. Pressed on Tata Steel's comments that the general election result will not alter its plans, Mr Reynolds added, "They've been dealing with a Conservative government that I don't think has understood or cared for the steel industry. The overall business operating environment for steel in the UK will improve under a Labour government because not just of the £3 billion Green Steel Transition Fund that we want to put in place." Plaid Cymru Economy and Energy spokesman Luke Fletcher said Wales' economy was being held back by Westminster parties, while Labour was not offering the hopeful vision that Wales desperately needed. From thousands of good paying and highly skilled jobs at risk in South Wales, to Westminster's failure to give Wales the powers we need to be in charge of our own economic destiny. "We know this isn't as good as it gets." He said the party's Green New Deal set out an economic vision which offered rewarding, meaningful and fair work in the emerging green and net zero sectors. The Welsh Liberal Democrats said Welsh workers could not be cast aside and treated as collateral damage. If the government doesn't step in, the local community and wider economy of the region will be devastated. The party is calling for a long-term vision for the steel industry, both in Wales and across the UK, and said the Conservatives had utterly failed to deliver one. The spokesperson added the Welsh Liberal Democrats have been pushing for a modernisation plan that would save jobs and transition to green steel for years. France, Germany and others are doing this, yet the Conservatives have been asleep at the wheel. The Reform Party said that there was every possibility that the steelworks would be the next casualty of the net zero vanity project, pushed by both the Labour and Conservative governments. A spokesperson added 3 blast furnaces have just been completed in India, which makes a mockery of the situation Port Talbot is now in. Importantly, in such precarious times, we need our steel for our defence industry. We will then be dependent on other countries for the supply. It will certainly be inferior in quality compared with Port Talbot. The party said both main parties were obsessed with net zero, adding that clean air could not be achieved through knee-jerk reactions. The backlog of Crown Court cases in England and Wales is close to a record high. More than a quarter have now been open for over a year. In one area, on average, nearly 18 months pass between an incident occurring and a jury reaching a verdict. But many people have been waiting a lot longer for justice. Silken Way is a 14-mile walking route that snakes its way through much of Telford. On the 25th of January 2018, there was an altercation on the path between 4 males, and a few days later, 3 teenagers were charged with grievous bodily harm. Telford magistrates sent the case to be heard at Shrewsbury Crown Court because of its seriousness, and a trial was fixed for September 2019. The problem at the court meant it had to be rescheduled for November 2020, but again the court couldn't fit the case in. An effort to hear the case in February 2022 also failed. A new trial was then set for November 2022. Further problems with court availability, however, meant the case was once more delayed, until last month, April 2024. Then on the day the 6th-day trial was due to begin, the court removed it from its listings as an existing trial had overrun. Shrewsbury didn't have the capacity for both trials to take place simultaneously. A new trial has now been set for January 2025, 7 years after the incident on Silken Way. Even if he'd been found guilty, it would have been better than what I'm subjected to now, says Lewis Harmon, one of the 3 accused, who, like the others, has pleaded not guilty and maintains he is innocent of any wrongdoing. I would have rather just got locked up, even if it's something for nothing, I've not done anything and start my life again, than be 7 years on thinking, is this going to happen? Now 24, he says he has been to court 16 or 17 times over the years. He had a mental breakdown because of the strain, he says, but is now a fully qualified truck mechanic and workshop foreman. If convicted, the 3 accused could still face 7-year prison sentences. Lewis Harborn points out, however, that if the original 2019 trial had gone ahead and if he'd been found guilty and imprisoned, then he would most likely have been out in 2022 and 2023 and would have been able to put it behind him. He says that people are not sympathetic when he expresses his frustration about the delays. If you try and talk about this sort of situation, people tend to just judge you straight away. Think you're a bit of a Rowan, he says, adding that it often seems pointless to make any plans for the future. He says the alleged victim of this incident said he felt he had been pushed aside to just deal with it on my own, with no support or anything. I just feel like the system is failing. Polling suggests that most people think public services have deteriorated nationally in recent years. This article is the second of 3 focusing on the town of Telford, which has been identified as facing particular challenges across its courts, schools and health services. Similar problems to those found in Telford are widespread, however. The delays in the court systems are one of a number of problems in the criminal justice system. Prisons are full, so some inmates are being released early while trials are being deliberately delayed to ease the pressure on jails. To cope with the backlog at Shrewsbury Crown Court, the Ministry of Justice has created an additional courtroom at Telford Magistrates Court. Cases listed for Court 4 at Shrewsbury Crown Court are now physically heard 14 miles away in Court 1 at Telford. During a recent visit made, a recorder from Manchester, a part-time judge, was hearing a case about alleged sex abuse within a family, which had finally come to court after being reported in 2019. The passage of time contributed to several witnesses responding with, "I can't remember," to many of the barrister's questions. Breaks in the trial had to last a minimum of 20 minutes, said the judge, as the building, a magistrate's court, wasn't set up to handle jury cases. Jurors had to be escorted across 2 car parks and up 2 flights of stairs to get to the jury room. Though proceedings were normally due to start at 10 a.m. and 2 p.m. each day, in reality the trial would resume up to an hour late, as the court tried to squeeze in other cases. One defendant failed to show up as he had not realised his hearing was in Telford rather than in Shrewsbury. Another geographical mix-up saw the judge in Telford hearing a case online with the defendant and barristers sitting in a courtroom in Shrewsbury. In a hearing in another case presided over by the same judge, concerning a man accused of threatening someone with a knife, was delayed as a prosecuting barrister failed to show up. An enterprising lawyer from the Crown Prosecution Service scurried out of court and returned minutes later with the barrister prosecuting the sexual abuse trial. He walked into court saying, "I literally have no idea what this case is about. I've not had any opportunity to read anything beyond the indictment." The defence barrister proceeded to brief him on the case, when the judge then turned to the prosecuting barrister and asked him to confirm whether the indictment was correct. The barrister replied, "I can't say one or the other." The case has now been listed for trial in December. "The system is broken," says Stephen Meredith, a criminal lawyer at WMB Law in Telford. "I don't believe there's enough judges. I don't believe there's enough courtrooms. A lot of the magistrates' courts were closed a number of years ago. There's a lot of people leaving the profession. The pressure is too high, and it's because of cost-cutting, in my opinion. Delays were increasing at Crown Courts before the pandemic, but the backlog now stands at more than 67,500 cases across England and Wales, according to the latest official data. The number of days in which Shrewsbury Crown Court was sitting decreased by 18% between 2016 and 2017, and 2019 to 2020, part of a nationwide effort by the Ministry of Justice to cut costs. A Ministry of Justice spokesman said the Crown Courts had sat for over 107,000 days in the past financial year, the highest number in 7 years. The analysis of government data shows on average it takes 17 months between an offence being committed and a Crown Court closing a case in the West Mercia area, which covers Telford, the rest of Shropshire, plus Hertfordshire and Worcestershire. That is the third longest in England and Wales after Central London and Hertfordshire. The problem has been exacerbated as one of the courts in the area, Hereford Crown Court, has been closed since June 2020 when the roof fell in. Cases have therefore been moved to other parts of West Mercia or the wider West Midlands. The number of outstanding cases in the area stood at 1,362 at the end of December 2023, 92% higher than in December 2019. Over the same period, the England total increased by 78%. The constant delays and adjournments mean that West Mercia's Police Witness Care Unit, the team that deals with people giving evidence, such as eyewitnesses, police officers or court experts, now has 24,000 people on its books, double the figure before the pandemic. Despite the increase in Shrewsbury Crown Court sitting delays, several lawyers, victims and defendants have said of various delays lasting years. Here are 3 examples. One man was charged with possession of an imitation firearm in 2019. After several attempts to start the trial, the case was finally dismissed last month because the main witnesses failed to attend court. A man charged with fraud in 2019 will not have his case heard until 2025. In the meantime, he cannot get divorced, as he doesn't know what sort of financial settlement he can reach with his wife. A drug dealer found in possession of heroin and crack cocaine was given a suspended sentence after it took 4 years to bring his case to court. The judge said he would have received a 2-year prison sentence if his case had been handled properly. One of the largest backlogs, however, appears to involve rapes and sexual assault cases. They've heard from numerous survivors who've been waiting years for justice. Our justice system is in crisis, says Becky Jones, Chief Executive of Access Counselling, which provides support to victims of sexual abuse. Survivors about to appear in court have to review the video of the original interview they gave police, but often, she says, they find out a couple of days before they are due to attend, or even on the day itself, that the trial has been adjourned and relisted for another time. And this happens again and again and again. We've seen our clients face up to 6 adjournments spanning more than 2 years, where each time they must do all the preparation, only to be let down by the system once again. The delays, Ms. Jones says, compound the impact of the abuse, affecting survivors' mental health and family relationships. The continued delays in the criminal justice system can prevent them from moving on with their lives. Survivors' experience of a criminal justice system has been described by some as like being raped all over again. In Emma's case, the delays were exacerbated by errors. After she reported a case of historical sexual abuse in 2019, the first trial due at Worcester Crown Court in 2022 was delayed because of a strike by barristers. It finally began at the end of 2023. I knew squarely what I had to do. You have to dig deep, you've got to put your armour on. Standing in the dock was the alleged abuser, waiting for Emma and her sister to give evidence, but within hours the case was adjourned. The listings officer had put the trial down for 2 days rather than the necessary 8, and the judge was not able to hear the case. You just need it to happen and you need it to go ahead. I remember going and seeing my sister in the afternoon, and I haven't held my sister like that for such a long time. We just sobbed. The trial has now been rescheduled for February 2025, almost 6 years after Emma first went to police. Andrew Buckley, a self-described mocker guy, recently swore off his Starbucks habit, reeling after the firm's latest price increases sent the cost of his drink above $6. The 50-year-old, who works in tech sales in Idaho, had been a loyal customer for decades, treasuring his near-daily venti mocha as a little luxury that allowed him to stretch his legs during the workday. But the company's latest price increases crossed the line. It was a straw that broke the camel's back on my feelings of inflation in general. It's like, that's it, I can't do it anymore, says Mr. Buckley, who rang up customer service with complaints before heading to social media to vent. I just lost it, he said. I don't plan to be back either. The decision was a sign of the bigger troubles brewing at Starbucks, which is hitting a new resistance from inflation-wary customers, just as fights over unionization and protests against the company cast as a way to oppose Israel's war in Gaza are sparking boycott calls and tarnishing the brand. Sales at the company slumped 1.8% year-on-year globally at the start of 2024. In the US, by far the firm's biggest and most important market, sales at stores open at least a year dropped 3%, the biggest fall in years outside the pandemic and the Great Recession. Among those jumping ship were some of the firm's most committed customers, rewards customers whose active numbers marked a rare 4% fall compared with the prior quarter. Former regular David White says he has stopped nearly all of his purchases with Starbucks in recent months, at times abandoning orders mid-purchase aghast at the totals in his cart. He says his outrage over price hikes have been bolstered by other company decisions, including its crackdown on workers seeking to unionize. They've got too full of themselves, the 65-year-old from Wisconsin says. They're trying to squeeze their day-to-day customers too much and profit via their employees and prices. For Andrew Buckley, the decision to quit the firm was down to prices, but he notes that the various noise surrounding the firm on political issues has left a bad taste in his mouth. "This is a coffee shop. They serve coffee," he says. "I don't want to see them in the news." On a conference call to discuss the firm's latest results, Starbucks chief executive Laxman Narasimhan said sales had been disappointing, citing in part more cautious customers, while acknowledging that recent misinformation had weighed on sales, especially in the Middle East. He defended the brand and vowed to bring back businesses with new menu items such as boba drinks and an egg sandwich with pesto, speedier service in stores, and a flurry of promotions. Chief Financial Officer Rachel Ruggieri said this week that the company was seeing signs of revival, noting growth in active rewards customers. The firm does not intend to go back away from its expansion plans, but she warned investors that the challenges would not be quick to disappear. "We do believe it's going to take some time," she said. The firm's struggles have stirred debate about whether they are a canary in the coal mine, kind of warning that the go-lucky consumer spending that has powered the world's largest economy in recent years might be abruptly losing steam. Like Starbucks, a slew of other big fast food brands, including McDonald's, Wendy's, and Burger King, have reported softening sales, announcing discount sprees to try to revive enthusiasm. But many analysts believe Starbucks' sales drop reveals more about the company than the wider economy. When you look back and you see the magnitude of the shift that occurred in such a short time, that doesn't usually point to something that's macro or in nature or price point related in nature, says Sharon Zakfia, head of consumer at investment management firm William Blair, who raised concern in a note to clients last month that the brand might be losing its luster. The company was already under pressure from years-long fight with union activists who have raised concerns about pay and working conditions that's clashed with the firm's progressive reputation. Then, in late October, after Starbucks sued the union for a social media post expressed solidarity with Palestinians, the dispute landed it in the middle of debates over Israel's war in Gaza, sparking a global boycott calls that took on a life of their own. Starbucks, not the only American brand to face backlash over the issue and not a target of the official boycott, divestment and sanctions (BDS) movement, has blamed misinformation about its views after issuing a blanket statement condemning violence in the region. It has also taken a different tack with the union in recent months. The two sides are now issuing joint press releases claiming progress on contract negotiations. But the boycott caused crescendo on social media in January and continued to linger, according to a Bank of America analysis. Last month, YouTube comedian Danny Gonzalez apologized to his 6.5 million followers for the incidental presence of a Starbucks cup in a recent video after a backlash. Though Starbucks executives had remained relatively quiet on the topic during the sales discussions, as Ms. Zekfire puts it, you'd really be putting your head in the sand not to think that it has an effect. Bank of America analyst Sarah Senator says she had initially been skeptical that the boycott would have had a major impact, but other causes seemed insufficient to explain such a sudden and severe sales drop, noting that the firm's price hikes do not stand out from their competitors. She says a quick turnaround could be a tall order, comparing the impact to the brand crisis that faced Chipotle after its stores were found responsible for sparking E. coli outbreaks, which took years to shake off. All you can do is to try to dampen the sound or essentially overcome it with other things, she says. It may just be a matter of time. On a recent sunny midday in New York, where the density of Starbucks cafes is amongst the highest in the world, it was hard to gauge the state of the business. Some shops appeared empty until customers darting in for a mobile order punctuated the calm. Even loyal drinkers said they saw opportunities for improvement. Maria saw a 24-year-old in town from Washington, D.C., still picks up drinks from the company 3 or 4 times a week, but her patronage has dimmed since the pandemic when it served as a reason to get her out of the house. She says recent price hikes sting and advises the company to change the food. For friends Veronica and Maria Georgia, the feel of the company has changed. Veronica, 16, says she doesn't go as much anymore due to a combination of better options elsewhere, the jump in prices, and recent protests by labour activists. That opened my eyes, she says. It feels more like a chain. And while Maria Georgia remains a regular customer, this 17-year-old says her perception of the firm has shifted. It used to be cool in middle school, now it's just convenient. Microsoft is making changes to a controversial feature announcing for its new range of PCs, powered by artificial intelligence, after it was flagged as a potential privacy nightmare. The company built the recall feature for Copilot Plus as a way to make users' lives easier by capturing and storing screenshots of their desktop activity. But after people claimed hackers might be able to misuse the tool and it saved screenshots, Microsoft is making the feature opt-in instead. The Information Commissioner's Office, ICO, the UK's data watchdog, has said it was making inquiries with Microsoft about the tool after concerns were raised. We've heard a clear signal that we can make it easier for people to choose to enable recall on their Copilot Plus PC and improve privacy and security safeguards, said Pavan Davuluri, Corporate Vice President of Windows and Devices on Friday. Mr. Davuluri shared the update in a blog post. The recall tool featured prominently during the unveiling of Microsoft's new PCs at its developer conference in May. The company is counting on artificial intelligence (AI) to drive demand for its devices. Executive Vice President Yusuf Mehdi said during the event's keynote speech that the feature used AI to make it possible to access virtually anything you have ever seen on your PC, and likened it to having photographic memory. The feature can search through a user's past activity, including their files, photos, emails, and browsing history. While this is something that lots of other devices do, the tool would also take screenshots every few seconds and search these too. Microsoft said it built privacy into Recall's design from the outset, and users would have control over what was captured, such as by opting out of capturing certain websites or not capturing private browsing on Microsoft Browser's Edge. It said changes to the feature would give people a clearer choice to opt in to saving screenshots during the setup of the PCs and would otherwise be turned off by default. Users will also be required to use Windows Hello authentication process to enable the tool, and their proof of presence will be required if they want to view their timeline of saved activity or search through it in Recall. The updates will be implemented before Copilot Plus PCs launch on the 18th of June. The family of teenage motorcyclist Harry Dunn said they felt shocked and upset after finding out that the woman who killed their son in a road crash would not be giving live evidence at the inquest into his death. Mr. Dunn, 19, was hit outside US Air Base RAF Croton in Northamptonshire in 2019 by a car driven by American woman Anne Sekulis. Northamptonshire coroner Anne Pember issued a request to Sekulis last year, inviting her to attend the inquest remotely when the hearing starts later. The proposed witness list for the inquest, seen by the PA news agency, now shows Sekulis will have her evidence read to the court rather than appearing in person. The Dunn family's spokesman, Rad Seeger, said they had only found out about the evidence plan on Thursday. He described it as yet another kick to the stomach. Sekulis' lawyer Ben Cooper, KC, told a pre-inquest hearing in November that his client, a US citizen, was keen to assist the inquest. According to the proposed witness list for the coroner's court, Sekulis' evidence is due to include a significant statement from her sections of her police interviews that took place in October 2019 and her witness statement written in December last year. Who was Harry Dunn? Harry Dunn's mother, Charlotte Charles, said the 19-year-old was larger than life with a great sense of humour. On the 27th of August 2019, he died in a crash near RAF Croton after Anne Sekulis' car struck his motorbike moments after she left the base. The car was driving on the right side of the road when it should have been on the left. Sekulis had diplomatic immunity asserted on her behalf by the US administration following the crash because her husband Jonathan worked for a US intelligence agency at the base. They then both left the UK. It later transpired in a US civil court hearing that Sekulis was employed by an intelligence agency in the US at the time of the crash. Why did it cause a diplomatic row? Following Mr. Dunn's death, his parents Charlotte Charles and Tim Dunn hoped the US would either waive Sekulis' immunity or she would voluntarily return to the UK. The campaign led to the White House meeting with President Donald Trump in October 2019. He revealed Sekulis was in the next room, but the family felt ambushed and did not meet her. In December 2019, the UK's Crown Prosecution Service, CPS, authorised Northamptonshire's police to charge Sekulis with causing Mr. Dunn's death. An extradition request for her to be brought to the UK was rejected by the US government. How did Sekulis end up in court? In the absence of extradition, the family launched a civil claim for damages against Sekulis and her husband in the US. A court hearing in Virginia in February 2021 was told that Sekulis was employed by an intelligence agency in the US when the crash happened. A resolution in the case was reached before Sekulis or her husband were called to give evidence, the details of which have not been disclosed. In December 2021, the CPS said Tsoukalos would appear at a magistrates' court in the UK to face unspecified charges. Tsoukalos finally appeared in court via video link from the US on the 29th of September at Westminster Magistrates' Court in London. She then appeared again by video link at the Old Bailey in London, where she pleaded guilty to causing death by careless driving on the 20th of October. She was sentenced to 8 months imprisonment, suspended for 12 months, and disqualified from driving for 12 months. What did Harry Dunn's family say after the hearing? His mother said the night Harry died was and will always be the worst ever of our lives. Getting to court and getting to where we are now has been the most monumental thing for me, because I can talk to him now and tell him we've done it. Promise complete. His father said, hopefully we've given hope to other families that they can do the same as us and get justice and belief and fight, because it will happen in the end. It will happen. What has happened since the court hearing? During the preparations for the inquest, human tissue was found on his clothing, which was returned to the family. The family said they were told at the time that everything had been destroyed in an explosion after the crash. A second funeral was organised in Banbury, which Mr. Dunn's mother, Charlotte Charles, described as much harder than the first service, which had been overshadowed by rumours that Miss Tsoukalos had left the UK. She said, I'm glad we had the opportunity today to remember him in the way we want to remember him, without worrying about what people were saying to us that afternoon. What will happen at the inquest? The purpose of an inquest is to answer certain questions about the death. These are who the deceased was, when and where they died, the medical cause of their death, and how they came by their death. The coroner may record a verdict such as natural causes, accident, or unlawful killing. If there is insufficient evidence for any other conclusion, an open verdict might be recorded. The coroner can also issue a longer statement describing the circumstances of the death, which is known as a narrative verdict. Whatever the outcome, the conclusion of the inquest will mark another step in the long and painful journey Mr. Dunn's family has had to take. An appeal has been launched for O blood type donors to book appointments across the country following the ransomware attack affecting major London hospitals. NHS Blood and Transplant is appearing for O blood type donors to book appointments to donate, as this is safe to use for all patients. The IT attack means the affected hospitals cannot currently match patients' blood at the same frequency as usual. Several London hospitals declared a critical incident, cancelled operations and tests, and were unable to carry out blood transfusions last week after the attack on the pathology firm Synovis, which Quilin, a Russian group of cybercriminals, is understood to have been behind. Memos to NHS staff at King's College Hospital, Guy's and St Thomas's, including the Royal Brompton and the Evelina London Children's Hospital and Primary Care Services in London, said a critical incident had been declared. Now, NHS Blood and Transplant is calling for positive and O-negative blood donors to book appointments in one of the 25 NHS blood donor centres in England to boost stocks. For surgeries and procedures requiring blood to take place, hospitals need to use O-type blood, as this is safe to use for all patients, and blood has a shelf life of 35 days, so stocks need to be continually replenished. That means more units of these types of blood than usual will be required over the coming weeks. O-negative is the type that can be given to anyone known as the universal blood type. It is used in emergencies or when a patient's blood type is unknown. Air ambulance and emergency responses vehicles carry O-negative supplies. Just 8% of the population have type O-negative, but it makes up for around 15% of hospital orders. O-positive is the most common blood type, 35% of donors have it, and it can be given to anybody with any positive blood type. This means 3 in every 4 people, or 76% of the population, can benefit from an O-positive donation. This is National Blood Week. It has been revealed that 3 blood donations are needed every minute in hospitals, and there are about 13,000 appointments available nationally this week in NHS blood donors, with 3,400 available in London. Dr. Gail Mifflin, Chief Medical Officer, NHS Blood and Transplant, said patient safety is our absolute priority. When hospitals do not know a patient's blood type or cannot match their blood, it is safe to use O-type blood. To support London hospitals to carry out more surgeries and to provide the best care we can for all patients, we need more O-negative and positive donors than usual. Professor Stephen Powis, Medical Director for NHS England, said staff are going above and beyond to minimise the significant disruption to patients caused by the IT attack. We know that a number of operations and appointments have been postponed or diverted to other neighbouring hospitals not impacted by the cyber attack as we prioritise pathology services for the most critical urgent cases. Holiday makers are being warned about a rise in scams where fake social media accounts are used to impersonate airlines. Bogus accounts exist for every major UK airline on X, formerly known as Twitter, and are regularly used to trick customers into giving away their personal data, according to Consumer Association Which. It added that X is too slow to take down offending accounts. The social media platform said accounts that impersonate organisations may be permanently suspended under its misleading and deceptive identities policy. It previously told Which that it had taken down all of the fake accounts identified by the consumer group. The scam often happens when a frustrated customer tries to contact an airline to try and fix a problem, said Which. It said scammers crawl social media, often using bots, a type of automated software, to find such interactions. They then respond to the query or complaint, hoping that the customer will not notice they are being contacted by a fake account. Which gave the example of a researcher who contacted the genuine Wizz Air X account at Wizz Air, asking if a flight was delayed, and almost immediately received responses from 2 fake accounts. Both used near identical language, apologised for the inconvenience, stating that they had already escalated this matter to the relevant department, and requesting a reachable WhatsApp number for assistance through direct messaging. Scammers will often ask customers to send them sensitive personal data or direct them to phishing websites where their credit card details can be harvested. Some fraudsters also claim customers are entitled to compensation or ask for a small fee to resolve the issue, Which said it had found bogus X accounts impersonating every major airline operating in the UK, including British Airways, EasyJet, Jet2, Ryanair, TUI, Virgin Atlantic, and Wizz Air. It said reporting fake accounts to X seems to have limited effect, and that most of the bogus posts and accounts it flagged were still live at the time of writing. On X, you may not misappropriate the identity of individuals, groups, or organisations, or use a fake identity to deceive others. Accounts that pose as another person, group, or organisation in a confusing or deceptive manner may be permanently suspended under X's misleading and deceptive identities policy. Airlines are urging customers to be wary of fake accounts and not share personal data on social media. An EasyJet spokesperson said, "We advise customers to only follow and engage with our sole official channel at EasyJet, which is identifiable by the gold verification badge for official businesses, for the latest updates or to seek support, and to be vigilant and to not engage with or click on links from other accounts." A Wizz Air spokesperson said, "We continue to report fake social media accounts and would like to remind customers to never give their personal details out on these channels. Passengers should contact customer service via our claims or call centres." Douglas Ross has announced he will resign as leader of the Scottish Conservatives. He will carry on in the role until after the election and will also resign as an MSP if he is re-elected to Westminster. It follows a row over Mr Ross standing as a candidate for Aberdeenshire North and Moray East instead of David Duguid, who has been in hospital and was in effect deselected. Mr Ross said he originally thought he could continue to serve as an MSP and MP as well as party leader, but said on reflection that is not feasible. He was the only MSP to also serve as an MP in the current Holyrood session before the UK Parliament dissolved. Mr Duguid, who had held the Banff and Buchanan seat since 2017, had already been adopted by local party members and has disputed suggestions that he is seriously ill. Last week, a senior Tory said that Mr Ross's position was not tenable and that his judgment over the situation had been sorely lacking. On Monday, a Scottish Conservative source said that Mr Ross had come to the realisation that the party's MSPs would not put up with him serving as both an MP and an MSP. They added that the reaction to him announcing plans to stand in place of Mr Duguid was another factor. Mr Ross said he was committed to fighting and winning the Westminster seat, the boundary for which has been newly drawn. He said, "Should I be given the honour to represent the people and communities of this new seat, they should know being the MP would receive my complete focus and attention. I will therefore stand down as leader following this election on the 4th of July, once a successor is elected. Should I win the seat, I will also stand down as an MSP to make way for another Scottish Conservative representative in Holyrood." Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said he had enjoyed working with Mr Ross, but respected his decision to step down. He said, "He's been a steadfast champion for the union, but also he and I have worked together on delivering 2 free ports for Scotland, attracting jobs and investment, standing up to the SNP's misguided gender recognition reforms, and also being unashamedly champions of Scotland's North Sea energy industry, the only party to consistently have done that. I think that's a track record for Douglas that he can be proud of. Mr. Ross also came under pressure at the weekend when the Sunday Mail reported that his own advisers had raised concerns over 28 parliamentary travel claims, which may have been combined with his work as a football linesman. He said the expenses claims were approved by the independent parliamentary body IPSA, and he would have no issue with the expenses being examined for a second time. In 2016, Mr. Ross became the MSP for Highlands and Islands via the last system. Following the unexpected resignation of Jackson Carlaw, he quickly became the leader of the Scottish Conservatives in August 2020. Mr. Carlaw said a younger and fresher voice was needed to lead the party into the next Scottish Parliament election. At the time, Mr. Ross was seen as a close ally of Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who spoke to him shortly after he was confirmed as leader, despite opposing Brexit in the EU referendum. However, he was also critical at times of Boris Johnson's leadership. Before leadership, the Scottish Conservatives, he had resigned as a Scotland Office Minister when the PM's advisor Dominic Cummings refused to quit for making a trip from London to Durham during lockdown. In January 2022, Mr. Ross withdrew his support for Boris Johnson, saying his position had become untenable over lockdown parties, and he called for a no-confidence vote. He then reversed that position when the war in Ukraine started, arguing that political upheaval at home would play into the hands of Vladimir Putin. In a double U-turn, Mr. Ross later voted for the motion of no confidence in Mr. Johnson's leadership. When a party leader announces their resignation in the middle of an election campaign, you know something has gone very wrong. For Douglas Ross, it was replacing the hospitalised David Dugard as his party's candidate in Aberdeenshire North and Moray East at the general election. Some were uneasy about the optics of the party leader swooping in when a colleague was ill, but what had gone down really badly with Conservatives MSPs at Holyrood was the plan to continue to try and carry on as both an MP and an MSP. Douglas Ross had previously promised he wouldn't do that. One of his Scottish Tory colleagues has said it had been receiving like a bucket of cold sick. So Mr. Ross will leave Holyrood if re-elected to Westminster. Some of his colleagues feel that's where his heart had always really been. Pressure piled up on him over the weekend and may well have intensified with the newspaper story about his expenses. His decision will impact on the UK-wide campaign too. Rishi Sunak won't have factored in his Scottish leader calling it a day in the run-up to Poland. Following Mr. Ross's announcement, the SNP's candidate for Aberdeenshire North and Moray East, Seamus Logan, called on him to resign as an MSP. He said it's clear he's been forced out as Scottish Tory leader after his shameful behaviour over David Dugard and his growing expenses scandal. Voters deserved a dedicated MSP, not one who is hedging his bets in case he loses the election. Alba leader Alex Salmond said it was the first case of a rat deserting a sinking ship while simultaneously trying to clamber aboard a gravy train. He called on him to resign as a candidate for the Westminster seat, adding that Mr. Ross was totally devoid of honour. Scottish Labour's deputy leader Jackie Baillie wished Mr. Ross luck in the future, reserving her criticism for the Conservative Party and UK government. She said voters now know that this rotten Tory government has nothing to offer Scotland. It's no wonder Douglas Ross has given up on trying to resuscitate the Scottish Tories' flailing campaign. Scottish Liberal Democrat leader Alex Cole-Hamilton, MSP, said the move was proof the party was in abject disarray. Just like the SNP, the Tories have been in power for too long, breaking rules and taking you for granted. And Lorna Slater, co-leader of the Scottish Greens, said it has never been clear what Mr. Ross's focus was between working as an MSP, an MP and a football linesman. She said, I think it's clear that the Tory party, UK-wide, including in Scotland, is toast. They're on the way out, so whoever takes on that role for the Scottish Tories is going to be a pretty thankless task. The Labour Party has pledged to create 100,000 additional childcare places and more than 3,000 new nurseries as part of its childcare plan. Labour has said it will turn classrooms in existing primary schools into school-based nurseries for an estimated cost of around £40,000 per classroom. The money would come from VAT levied on private schools, a move which has been previously criticised in the sector and by other parties. Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer said if elected, his party will create the childcare places needed to turn the page and rebuild Britain. The number of nursery and primary school children in England is predicted to fall in the next 4 years. Labour says it will use the space freed up in primary school buildings for the 3,334 new highly qualified nurseries which would be set up in high-need areas which lack enough childcare places. They could be run by the primary schools themselves or by local private and voluntary sector nursery providers. The funding will come from Labour's plan to remove what it calls unfair tax breaks from private schools. Last year, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak said that Labour's plans to remove the tax breaks and charge private schools 20% VAT was part of a class war to punish aspirational parents. On Sunday, Labour's Shadow Secretary General Emily Thornberry said the policy could increase class sizes in the short term. Her colleague, the party's Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson, said that wasn't right and that there had been a misunderstanding. The Today programme said that pupil numbers were forecast to fall and that increased class sizes won't be the outcome. Labour said its announcement is the next stage in its long-term plan to deliver a modern childcare system that better supports parents from the end of parental leave to the end of primary school. After 14 years of Conservative government, too many children are starting at school already behind, and too many parents are being held back from fulfilling their career ambitions. Ms Phillipson said the party will fix the childcare system. The 3,300 new nurseries were announced today will be key to delivering Labour's mission for 500,000 more children to hit the early learning goals by 2030, giving them the firm foundations for which to succeed. Labour had previously announced plans to set up free breakfast clubs in every primary school in England. The party has also committed to stick to government plans for an expansion of funded childcare earlier this year, which saw working parents receive additional free childcare hours from April 2024. The Department for Education has previously said about 85,000 extra childminder and nursery places are needed in England for the expansion to work. A spokesperson from the Liberal Democrats said that flexible, affordable childcare is critical for giving parents more choice over how to organise their lives, helping them to return to work if they want to, and tackling the gender pay gap. But affordable childcare is only part of the picture. The spokesperson said that the Liberal Democrats will also set up plans to transform parental leave. Gender equality charity at the Fawcett Society welcomed Labour's plans and said it was about time childcare became an election priority. We need to see childcare given the prominence it deserves in every party's manifesto, and we need to see genuine long-term commitments that last beyond this election. The charity said 85% of mothers struggle to find childcare that fits around their jobs, leading many to stop working. Sarah Ronan, director of the Early Education and Childcare Coalition, said that Labour's commitment to increasing the number of places is the right one. However, if you boost places, you have to also boost staff numbers, so underpinning its plan for reform must be a new workforce strategy that will attract more people into the sector and see early years professionals receive the pay, conditions and respect they deserve. The charity Pregnant Then Screwed welcomed the first stage plan to reform the sector. There is little point in reducing the cost of childcare for parents if they cannot access a place. With long waiting lists and childcare deserts across England, it is imperative we do not continue to paper over the cracks, its founder Joelle Brearley said. 20 buildings, including Barclays branches in London, Bristol and Brighton, have been vandalised as part of a coordinated UK attack by a pro-Palestine group. Palestine Action has claimed responsibility for the incidents. In Bristol, the windows of a city centre branch, Barclays Bank, were smashed and red graffiti sprayed over the building. A spokesperson for the bank said, "While we support the right to protest, we ask that campaigners do so in a way which respects our customers, colleagues and property." In Edinburgh, rocks were thrown through windows inscribed with the names of Palestinians killed in the conflict. Shut the System, a recently launched underground climate movement, partnered with Palestine Action's underground division to launch the attacks, both activist groups confirmed. According to the group's, targeted actions will continue until Barclays stops investing in certain companies. A spokesperson for Barclays said the bank provides vital financial services to US, UK and European public companies that supply defence products to NATO and its allies. The defence sector is a fundamental to our national security, and the UK government has been clear that supporting defence companies is compatible with ESG considerations. Decisions on the implementation of arms embargoes to other nations are the job of respective elected governments. Avon and Somerset Police have been approached for comment. During its 7th of October attacks in southern Israel, Hamas killed about 1,200 people and took some 251 people hostage. Some 116 remain in the Palestinian territory, including 41 the army says are dead. On Saturday, the Hamas-run health ministry said the death toll in Gaza is now 37,084 people. The family of a convicted sub-postmistress who died before her name was cleared say they have made her final wish come true. Karen Lorimer's family took on her case after her death from cancer in April 2022. They were expecting to be back in court this week but her conviction was quashed sooner than expected. Karen's husband, David Lorimer, said it meant the world to him, but it was sad that his late wife had died before she was exonerated. Karen had worked in the New Farm Lock Post Office in Kilmarnock for 17 years before an audit in 2008 uncovered an apparent £38,000 shortfall. She pled guilty to embezzlement to avoid going to prison. At the time, Karen had a 4-year-old son and an adult daughter. In 2009, she was sentenced to 300 hours of community service and forced to pay the post office £15,000. She was one of hundreds of people across the UK falsely accused of crimes like theft and false accounting. The Horizon Post Office scandal has been described as the most widespread miscarriage of justice in the UK in recent times. Karen's family were hoping her name would be cleared at a court hearing on Friday, but her niece, Joanne Hughes, received an email from the family's lawyer 10 days ago. To her delight, it confirmed her aunt's conviction has been quashed. Joanne said, "The first thing I did was call David, and I don't even think I said hello. I just said, that's it, she's clear, she's clear. I think we both had goosebumps. It's like we've made her final wish come true, which is priceless." David said it was amazing, but his emotions were up and down. He added, "I'm really, really happy and I'm really sad that Karen's not here, but she'll know. She'd be so proud of everything we've done for her. She'll be happy up there just now." Karen's name would likely have been cleared by Scottish Parliament legislation automatically, exonerating all affected sub-postmasters. The new law will come into force in Scotland once the bill receives royal assent, but Karen's family had already started the process to have her conviction quashed in the appeal court. She is the 7th person in Scotland to have their name cleared through that route. While Karen's family are delighted her conviction has been quashed, they say it is bittersweet. Karen's daughter Laura Miller was 25 when her mum was convicted. She said it was extremely important for a mother's name to be cleared. Laura said, "I find it most upsetting that she died a convicted criminal. That can't be undone. I'm happy she's exonerated, but she died a convicted criminal. Something my mum hadn't done and she's taken it with her." She said her mother would be delighted that her name had been cleared. Laura added, "She knew all along she'd done nothing wrong. So did we. Now it's just the proof that she really didn't do it." In Scotland, the Crown Office and Procurator Fiscal Service (COPFS) had sole responsibility for prosecuting Horizon cases, whereas in England the Post Office could act as a prosecutor. The COPFS knew in 2013 there were potential problems with the Post Office Horizon IT system, and it officially stopped prosecuting cases in 2015, but it didn't receive historic convictions like Karen's. A COPFS spokesman said they empathised with those who had suffered from injustice. He added, "Scotland's prosecutors acted in good faith upon evidence presented to them. When Horizon prosecutions stopped, we had been assured that a further review of cases would not reveal miscarriages of justice. It was only following the litigation in England in 2019 that the true and full extent of the issues with the Horizon system came to light. The actions of the Post Office are being examined in a public inquiry and investigation by police." A Post Office spokesperson said, "We apologise unreservedly to victims of the Horizon IT scandal, and our focus remains on supporting the ongoing public inquiry to establish the truth of what happened so those affected can receive the justice and redress they deserve."